Biographical Bytes from Bala, Laurel Hill West Stories number 45 for mid-June 2025. Milton Cooper Work, America's first bridge expert.
Stony plots that are covered with thorns. Who are these names at peace? Who are these names at peace? Who are these names at peace? Who are these names at peace?
Welcome to the 45th episode of Biographical Bytes from Bala, Laurel Hill West Stories, an historic and active cemetery in Bala, Kenwood, Pennsylvania. I am Dr. Joe Lex, retired professor of emergency medicine from Temple University, volunteer tour guide, and volunteer podcaster for Laurel Hill. I am recording this on June 12th of 2025 at the tail end of an upper respiratory infection. I've been battling a bronchitis for several days, so if you hear a rasp in my voice or a sudden drop in the tone, forgive me in advance. I'll try to get through this. Laurel Hill West opened in 1869 across the river from its sister cemetery, Laurel Hill East in Philadelphia. It is more than twice as big as Laurel Hill East. It has a totally different feel, a strikingly different population. When I explain the difference between the two cemeteries, I tell people that Laurel Hill East is mostly a Victorian cemetery associated with the Civil War. Laurel Hill West is more of an Edwardian cemetery associated with the Great War. But like Laurel Hill East, it is open 365 days a year, now from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Plenty of parking at the business office just off Belmont Avenue or at the conservatory and the bell tower. If you enter from Belmont, follow the road past the second gate. Follow the road with the white line in the middle. It'll take you right to the conservatory and a big parking lot. And there's another possibility. You can just stop in while you're walking on the Kenwood Trail. We have an entrance to the cemetery from the Kenwood Trail. We have another entrance to the cemetery from down at near the Pencoid Landing. Come up the hill from Pencoid Landing, and there's another entrance to the cemetery there. This mid-June 2025 podcast is about Philadelphia lawyer, cricket master, and especially bridge expert Milton Cooper Work, a man who mastered the card game and became a world's expert. The scoring system that he developed is still in use today. And don't worry, I'm going to tell you what you need to know about bridge as we go along. We're going to go on a little historical look at cards before we get into Milton Cooper Work. So let's get started. Milton C. Work, 1864-1934, America's Bridge Master. I am a baseball fan. I have been for as long as I can remember. When teams split the first two games of a three-game set, they determine the series winner by a third game. What's it called? The rubber game. Now, this term has nothing to do with the pitching rubber 60 feet 6 inches away from home plate. It comes from the card games whist and bridge, where a rubber is 3 games. And a grand slam home run with a runner on every base, that's the most runs you can score with one batter, just as a grand slam in bridge means that you take every trick. I'll bet if you examine your own vocabulary, as I did mine, you're going to find a lot of the language of whist and bridge has invaded it, even if you've never played a game in your life. I mean, there's some phrases like stack the deck, holding all the aces. Those are obvious. You stack the deck to give yourself a favorable outcome. If you hold all the aces, you are in a very good position to win. If you have something in spades, that means you have it in top quality, and a lot of it. And a trump card, which is the most powerful on the table, gives you a significant advantage over your opponent. Things are most likely to turn out for the best if you play your cards right. But if you've been dealt a bad hand, you're probably out of luck, unless you can show that it was a misdeal. In fact, your aberrant behavior may have other players say that you're not playing with a full deck. If you replicate what someone has already done, it's said that you follow suit. But your construct may collapse if it is a mere house of cards. Something can get lost in the shuffle. A favorable result may not be in the cards, but eventually everyone has to lay their cards on the table. If you overestimated the strength of your position, you overplayed your hand. If you finesse someone, you attempt to make your lower-ranking cards powerful by taking advantage of the favorable position of higher-ranking cards held by your opposition. I mean, even the term chicanery comes from bridge. It comes from the card term chicane. That's a hand with no trump cards. And then there's the phrase, according to Hoyle. This refers to strictly adhering to established rules. This term originated from Edmund Hoyle, 1672-1769, a British writer renowned for his publications on card games. Hoyle's expertise and authority led to the use of this phrase in context where precise adherence to expert guidelines is required. Playing cards arrived in Europe from Egypt around 1370. They were reported in France in 1377. In English-speaking countries, a standard pack comprises 52 of what are called French-suited cards. In other countries, for other games, depending on the games that are played, there are packs of 24, 32, 36, 40, 48 cards. Those are called German or Latin-suited packs. The French-suited cards use the French suits, clovers or clubs, carreaux, tiles or diamonds, coeur, hearts, pique, pikes or spades. Each suit contains 3 face or court cards. In a standard 52-card deck, these are the valet, the knight, the knave or the jack, the dame, the lady or the queen, and the roi, the king. Now, the French suit insignia was derived from German suits sometime around 1480. The face card design was heavily influenced by Spanish cards that would circulate in France. One of the most obvious traits inherited from Spain are the standing kings. Kings from Italian, Portuguese, or Germanic cards are seated. The joker originated in the United States during the Civil War. It was created as a trump card for the game of euchre. Its use depends on the game being played. Packs with 2 jokers started to become the norm during the 1940s for the game of canasta. They are now standard. Some German games require up to 6 jokers. There are 52 factorial, 52 times 51 times 50, or 8.06 times 10 to the 67th possible arrangements of a standard 52-card deck. 10 to the 67th is also called 10 unvigintillion. Un, in this case, meaning 1. 10 to the 69th is duovigintillion. 10 to the 75th is quattrovigintillion, etc. So, vigintillion means 10 to the 63rd. It's derived from the Latin vicesimus, which means 20. The 4 suits in order of strength from top to bottom: spades, hearts, diamonds, clubs. If you forget the order, realize that alphabetically they run from weakest to strongest: clubs, diamonds, hearts, spades. The king face card is also called the cowboy or the monarch. The king of clubs is purportedly based on Alexander the Great. King of diamonds, also known as the man with the axe or the one-eyed king, that's Julius Caesar. Hearts, Charlemagne, or the Suicide King. Called the Suicide King because if you look at the early representations of the King of Hearts, it looks like he's stabbing his own head with a sword. Initially, the sword was behind his head, but as further designs came along, people got sloppy, and it really looks like the King of Hearts is stabbing his head. King of Spades is King David. Now, when the French Revolution toppled the monarchy of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, the king and the queen disappeared. They were replaced by liberty and equality. And that's when the ace got promoted from the lowest card to the top card. But the royals returned to the deck during the reign of Napoleon, but the ace stayed high. During the American Civil War, the otherwise much beloved Confederate General Robert E. Lee, who loved to see miles and miles of trenches, gained the nickname the King of Spades from his weary troops. Queen of Clubs is Argine, A-R-G-I-N-E. That's an anagram for Regina, Latin for queen. Queen of Clubs is also called the Flower Queen. If you look closely, she's holding a flower in her right hand. The Queen of Diamonds is Old Testament Genesis' Rachel. Queen of Hearts, Helen of Troy, or Judith. Now, because the Queen of Spades is considered evil in games like Spades, she has acquired other monikers like the Black Lady, Black Maria, Calamity Jane, Pallas Athena, or Molly Hogan for some reason. And finishing the face cards are not the princes or the dukes or the barons, but non-titled jacks, also known as knaves, valets, nibs, heels. Jack of Clubs is Lancelot, Diamonds is Hector or Roland, Hearts is La Hire, Spades is Ogier. And then some specific cards have their own name. The Nine of Diamonds is also known as the Curse of Scotland, although nobody seems to be able to explain why. There was a popular game in Victorian England based on the Nine of Diamonds that was called Pope Joan, so the card also has that nickname. Seven of Diamonds is the beer card. In trick-taking card games, such as bridge, the beer card is a name informally given when players agree in advance that if one of them wins the last trick of a hand with the seven of diamonds, their partner has to buy them a beer. If you win the first trick of a game with the beer card, that reward goes up to a case of beer. Four of Clubs, ooh, that's a bad card. It's considered a very bad luck card. It's called the Devil's Bedpost. Ace of Clubs is called the Puppy Foot. Ace of Spades, Death card. When I was in Vietnam, there was a myth that the Viet Cong and the NVA were spooked by the Ace of Spades. So American soldiers often left an Ace of Spades behind on the bodies of a slain enemy. This was mostly rumor. And some people actually consider the Ace of Spades to be the anti-peace sign. Ace of Diamonds, also known as a pig's eye. Now, what about the game bridge? Well, it was preceded by whist. The card game whist traces its ancestry at least to the early 16th century in England. First reference found was in 1529, a published sermon by a Bishop Latimer. Prototype forms of whist were played under different names: Triumph, Trump, Ruff, Slam, Ruff and Honors, Whisk and Swabbers, Whisk and Whist. The name whist probably refers to the rapid action of sweeping up or whisking up the cards after you win a trick. The game was popular under its modern name of whist by the middle of the 17th century, but it was not until 1742 that the first book devoted to whist appeared. Edmund Hoyle's famous short treatise on whist. This rapidly became a bestseller, and many pirated editions immediately appeared afterwards. Now, as far as duplicate whist, I'll explain what that is in a couple of minutes. It's where the cards stay the same, but the players change. The United States was actually slightly ahead of England. There was a duplicate whist match played privately in Chicago in 1880 and in a club in New Orleans in 1882. The first inter-club match was played in Philadelphia in 1883. It was arranged by a Penn student named Milton C. He is the subject of today's podcast. The first duplicate match in the Old World was probably in Glasgow, Scotland, in 1888. Although the American Whist League flourished for some 40 years, bridge, the game that eventually led to its decline and fall, came on the American scene when the game reached New York in 1893. In London, members of the Portland Club began to play bridge in 1894 at the insistence of Lord Brougham, who had learned it in India from some army officers. But according to a letter published in Bridge magazine in 1932, Frank J. Nathan had played the first English game in 1892 at St. George's Club in Hanover Square. It was introduced by a Colonel Studdy, S-T-U-D-D-Y, who said it was of Levantine origin. He had learned it in the trenches at Plevna during the Russo-Turkish War of 1877-1878. Bridge was initially known on the Riviera as Khedive, likely due to its association with Cairo. Turkey maintained control over Egypt almost continuously from the early 16th century until World War I, and Khedive was the official title held by the Turkish viceroy. Contemporary bridge historians have established that the game originated within the diplomatic community in Istanbul. The name's been linked to the Serbo-Croatian term Cebrc, C-E-B-R-C, which means a large quantity or maximum. In Russian, it was referred to as Sibirsky Yerilash, which translates as Siberian mixture. It's believed that affluent Greeks who traveled to Russia and Turkey played a significant role in introducing the game in Western Europe. And rumor has it that the most serious players had to cross a local bridge to play their games, and thus the structure's name finally became synonymous with the game. Now, one important change from whist to bridge was the exposure of one hand. The dealer's partner becomes the dummy. This follows the precedent of dummy whist, which actually originated as a game for 3 players. It evolved from a game that was played first in India by 3 British officers that were so isolated they were unable to find a 4th. Auction bridge developed in the early 1900s as the predecessor to contract bridge. It emphasized bidding and partnerships, but lacked many of the structured rules later found in contract bridge. Players bid on the number of tricks they believe their partnership can take, but they don't make a formal contract in auction bridge. There are no specific contract levels. Players simply aim to win the highest number of tricks. The trump suit, if one is used, is chosen by the highest bidder. Nowadays, most players opt for contract bridge, in which they predict the number of tricks their partnership can take, and then use a complicated scoring system based on the values of a suit, the number of tricks taken, et al. Although bridge required no special equipment, with only 4 people and a deck of cards, it was initially associated with the upper class and snobbery, but it migrated to the middle class as it gained popularity. In the 1997 movie Titanic, think of all the bridge tables that were set up in the first-class lounge. In Ian Fleming's 1955 novel Moonraker, James Bond engages in a high-stakes bridge game against the Elon Musk-like villain Hugo Drax. Bridge made its way to the middle class on television. Both the shows I Love Lucy in the 1950s and the Dick Van Dyke Show in the 1960s showed suburban couples playing bridge. There's a sequence on the TV series The Crown in which Queen Elizabeth II plays bridge. Bridge clubs also served as a strong social outlet for women who were finding their independence in the early 20th century, as Victorian stuffiness and Gothic revival gave way to Edwardian New Women Neo-Georgian ways. As women developed strong social networks, more than one brilliant idea for improvement of the neighborhood or the local school or the apartment complex or the country came out of a conversation that started at a friendly neighborhood bridge game. Contract bridge was introduced in the 1920s. It formalized many of the rules and bidding conventions. Players bid to establish a formal contract. that specifies the minimum number of tricks a partnership must take to fulfill their bid. Both teams start at 6 tricks, so if you bid 3 hearts, your partnership has to take at least 9 tricks, 6 plus 3, while using hearts as trump. During the bid, you try to surreptitiously share what's in your hand with your partner, who tries to do the same with what's in their hand. Well, soon there would be 3 codes of laws for this new game. 1927, Robert F. Foster and the Knickerbocker Whist Club were withdrawn in favor of the more authoritative code issued by the Whist Club of New York. 1928, the game was adopted in the major New York clubs. Late that same year, the first national championship was held, 1928, with the Vanderbilt Cup as the prize. In 1929, the American Auction Bridge League dropped the word auction from its title when it was clear that contract had supplanted auction. Many established auction authorities struggled to achieve expertise in contract. Many of them failed. Remaining an American, Eli Culbertson founded the first contract magazine in 1929. The initial issue of the Bridge World magazine proposed the creation of an international code of laws for contract bridge. Committees from the United States, England, and France were subsequently appointed, resulting in the implementation of the first international code November 1st, 1932. September 1930, Culbertson published his Contract Bridge Blue Book. This became a bestseller. It appeared in annual revisions for 4 years. It was Culbertson, who's buried in Vermont, through his writings, his personality, his lectures, and his organization, who was most responsible initially for the wide vogue that the game quickly attained. The international publicity that resulted from the Culbertson-Lenz match in 1931 and the Anglo-American matches in 1930, 1933, and 34 made the new game of contract bridge a household word. Although Culbertson's was the first widely accepted system of bidding in contract bridge, it became outmoded, and numerous other systems of bidding came to the fore since this day. The Gorin methods are based on point count valuation and became standard in the United States after 1950. Ukrainian-American Charles Gorin was born and raised in Philadelphia. The growth of tournament bridge was hampered in the 1930s by the simultaneous activity of 3 separate organizing bodies: the American Bridge League, the American Whist League, and the United States Bridge Association. But from 1937 onward, the American Contract Bridge League had the field to itself. There followed a period of steady growth stimulated by the Master Point Plan. 1935 became the year of the first recognized World Bridge Championship, although several semi-official international matches had been played earlier. Later championships on the international scene were the first of the post-war championship series in 1950, the foundation of the World Bridge Federation in 1958, and the first Team Olympiad in 1960. The modern game of contract bridge was the result of innovations to the scoring of auction bridge by Harold Sterling Vanderbilt and others, especially Philadelphian Milton Cooper work. The most significant change was that only the tricks contracted for were scored below the line toward game or a slam bonus, a change that resulted in bidding becoming much more challenging and interesting. Don't worry, I don't understand what I just said either. Also new was the concept of vulnerability. This made sacrifices to protect the lead in a rubber more expensive. Various scores were adjusted to produce a more balanced and interesting game. The number of people who played contact bridge built until in the mid-1940s, a survey found bridge was played in 44% of U.S. households. The game is still widely played, it's just not promoted very much, especially among retirees. If you go to retirement homes, nursing homes, you're going to find a lot of bridge players. 2005, the ACBL estimated there were 25 million bridge players in the United States. Now, a lot of people compare combat and war games to chess. Bridge is probably a more accurate analogy. General Dwight Eisenhower recognized this. No board game could truly replicate battlefield conditions or geostrategic maneuvers, primarily because all of the pieces are visible on the table. Card games provided better models due to the concept of the fog of war. Opponent deception, key information is often concealed. Bridge players typically see only a quarter of the cards. Some of the information they gather may be misleading. Communication is crucial in bridge, with every bid or significant card play transmitting messages to both your partner and your opponent. Players have to actually sometimes choose between communicating truthfully with their partners, thus informing their opponents, or deceiving the opposition but confusing their partner. This dynamic does not exist in your typical board game. Exceptional bridge players excel in strategic deception, akin to skilled military leaders, diplomats, and politicians. Duplicate bridge is a specialized form of contract bridge in which an identical set of deals is played by multiple competitors. Scoring is based on comparative performance, which allows each hand, regardless of its strength, to be played in direct competition with others who hold the same hand. This enhances the role of skill and reduces the impact of chance. This method differs from traditional bridge. Traditional bridge, remember, contract bridge, each hand is dealt new, and scores can be significantly influenced by luck in the short term. Sunday, December 31st, 1886, 18 graduates of the University of Pennsylvania met to plan a club in which they would play whist. They called it the Hamilton Whist Club, named in honor of C.D.P. Hamilton. The members raised enough funds to buy a plot of land on the northeast corner of 41st and Irving Street. Irving is between Locust and Spruce in West Philadelphia. And they hired architect Edward P. Hazelhurst, who's at Laurel Hill East in Section U. He'd recently worked at the firm of Frank Furness, Laurel Hill East, Section P. His partner, Samuel Huckle Jr., Laurel Hill West, Lansdowne, an alumnus of the firm of Benjamin D. Price. Hazelhurst and Huckle designed the clubhouse, and this new clubhouse attracted the Fourth American Whist Congress, when more than 100 similar clubs gathered at 41st and Irving in West Philadelphia. The Hamilton Whist Club eventually became the Hamilton Whist and Bridge Club, the Hamilton Bridge Club, and finally the Hamilton Club. In 1956, the club moved to the Bala Country Club into a house that was built in 1742 and was also home to an exclusive social organization called the Rabbit. As I pointed out in the podcast about golfers and golfing a few years ago, Bala Country Club is located in Philadelphia. The Philadelphia Country Club is located out in Gladwin. The Rabbit was founded in 1866. It was named after its original clubhouse on Rabbit Lane in West Philadelphia. It's sort of the Philadelphia equivalent of Yale's Skull and Bones. It is so exclusive that there is not a list of past and present members. It's rumored that the club has about 50 members. It may have as many as 100. We do know they are all men. At least we think they're all men. Don't bother inquiring about membership unless you're closely related to a current member, or maybe go find a time machine, go back and be born to a family with a name like Biddle, Cadwallader, Drinker, or Wetherill. At any rate, the Hamilton Club bought that colonial building in 1920, and that remains their home. They paid $40,000 for it. They share it with the Rabbit Club. One of the men at the center of all this activity was Milton Cooper Work, a Philadelphia lawyer who was born in 1864. Both his parents were avid whist players, and he took up the game as a youngster. In fact, when he was a student at the University of Pennsylvania, Work is the one who set up what was probably the first duplicate tournament in the country. Work was one of the better cricket players in Philadelphia. He spent several years with the Belmont Cricket Club. As I pointed out in prior podcasts, before baseball took hold as a national pastime, cricket was extremely popular. There were more than 100 local amateur teams in neighborhoods around the city. And Philadelphia was blessed with 4 of the best organized teams in the country. Philadelphia, 1854, Germantown, 1854, Marion, 1865, and Belmont, 1874. Philadelphia cricket is located on Willow Grove Avenue in Chestnut Hill. There's another branch in Flowertown. Germantown was originally in the Nicetown section of the city. Moved to Mannheim Street in 1890. It is still a private club. Its founder, William Rochwister, is buried at Laurel Hill East. Marion Cricket Club opened in Haverford in 1865. It's with the last version of its clubhouse designed by famed Philadelphia architect Frank Furness. It was members of this club who started the famed Marion Golf Club. And then Belmont was in West Philadelphia at 50th and Chester Street. The old clubhouse now serves as the King Sessing Recreation Center. There had been a collegiate cricket team at Dartmouth as early as 1793, but that was for all comers, so many of the players had learned the game in Europe. Haverford College was actually the first cricket team exclusively for American players, established in 1833. Today, Haverford is the only varsity cricket team in the nation. By 1860, there were more than 6,000 cricket players in New York and Philadelphia. And America's first cricket star was Walter S. Newhall. He died in an equestrian event during the Civil War. He's interred at Laurel Hill East South Section in Area 9. And remember that Baseball Hall of Famer Harry Wright, interred at Laurel Hill West, came to this country when his father was recruited to play cricket for a New York team in the 1860s. We just missed it, but during the first week of May of 2025, Philadelphia had its annual International Cricket Festival. More than 200 players from around the world converged on Philadelphia for 4 days of action. Milton Work played with the Belmont Cricket Club from 1880 to 1887. He's also listed as playing cricket, tennis, and baseball for the University of Pennsylvania in 1887. In 1897, he served as manager of a team for several years as editor of American Cricketer magazine. Gradually, wealthy Philadelphians were drawn away from cricket to the emerging upper-class sports of golf and tennis, both of which I covered in prior podcasts. An unnamed injury while he played golf forced Work to find another passion, and he chose whist and bridge. Now, these games were entering their heyday at the turn of the 20th century when millions of people played, some to the point of addiction. Work became recognized as the outstanding American authority and a giant in the field. Milton Work's best-known contribution to the modern game of bridge was the popularization of the Work point count method of hand evaluation, in which aces are worth 4 points each, kings 3, queens 2, and jacks 1. This method was first proposed by Bryant McCampbell in 1915, but it became widely known through Work's lectures and writings. Although Eli Culbertson's honor trick method of evaluation dominated the bridge world for much of the 30s and 40s, Work's point count method became the rage when Charles Gorin made it the cornerstone of his standard American system. This method, with some modifications, is still used today by players everywhere. To explain the scoring system in bridge is far too complicated for me to accomplish in a podcast, especially since I know nothing about this topic. I tried to sort out a double versus redouble and vulnerable versus non-vulnerable, under tricks versus over tricks. I folded. I suggest, if you want to know more, you can go to the lengthy Wikipedia article titled Bridge Scoring, and maybe you can pick up on the fineries better than I can. I think to learn it, I have to learn it from a real human being. I know that points are assigned to the suits. Spades and hearts are the major suits. Clubs and diners the minor suit. Penalty points are retracted for not making your bids and other faults. And then scoring in duplicate bridge is a whole nother story. So I'm not even going to get into this. Now, if you're close to my age, I'm in my late 70s, you probably think of bridge as an old people's game. Guess what? We're old people now. But it was my parents' generation that lived through the bridge craze of the early half of the 20th century. Still in our time, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett are both excellent bridge players. So's Martina Navratilova. Milton Work gained his fame in the first part of the century. The name that I remember from my youth is Charles Gorin. He had a weekday column in the Chicago newspapers. I never bothered to read it, but it was unavoidable. Even when his guest columnist was Egyptian actor Omar Sharif, somebody that Gorin trained and became another contract bridge expert. Now initially, Milton Work did not play for money. After a 30-year career as an attorney in Philadelphia, he took a leave of absence in 1917 to tour the United States with Wilbur C. Whitehead to organize bridge competitions and give lectures on bridge to promote the sale of Liberty bonds during the Great War. He was so popular on this tour that he quit his law practice outright, and he took up bridge as a career. He wrote more than 24 books about the game. He gave innumerable lectures and demonstrations around the country. Otherwise, he did what he could to advance the cause of bridge players nationwide. Work founded and edited one of the earliest auction bridge magazines, the Work Whitehead Auction Bridge Bulletin, 1924-26, and its successor, the Auction Bridge Magazine, 1927-29. Assisted by Whitehead, he served as the chief authority on the first book of bridge games broadcast on radio, 1926-29. In 1928, he was paid $7,000 a week to give brief lectures on bridge during vaudeville presentations. Work built up a considerable fortune, and he retired from bridge, but he invested badly. He lost a lot of that money in the market crashes, 1929 and 30, so he returned to the bridge playing circuit, this time as a full-blown professional. He established a team that included his protege, Charles Gorin, who's buried in Bucks County, and they won 5 consecutive sectional tournaments. In the 1930s, Lucky Strike Cigarettes had a promotion for its short-lived Lucky Strike Flat 50s tins. Get a large flat tin of Lucky Strike cigarettes, and in it would be a large square card with random bridge hands printed along the edges, north, south, east, west on any edge. It was a series of 50 cards that had been arranged by Milton C. Work. The hands had various glamorous images on the front. They're quite a collector's item now. Some of them had pictures of Miss America, some of them had actors and actresses of the times, and whoever purchased the flat of 50s was invited to play the hand. Quote, try your skill first, then read bidding and play by Milton C. Work on back. To play cards, bend back out of sight. As tricks are won, press down score tabs. The bidding and the play of the hands are shown on the back of each. Milton Work was married twice. First wife, Millicent Drecka, 1869-1926. She is also buried in the summit section of Laurel Hill West, but nowhere near Milton. They were divorced after more than 20 years for desertion. Millicent was an excellent bridge player. She was also a seasoned golfer. They had no children together. The divorce was announced June 6, 1921. It read in part, Mrs. Millicent Drecka Work of Chelsea has sued Milton C. Work, lawyer and clubman, for divorce. The Works are widely known socially, both in this city and at the shore. Mrs. Work lives at the Lenox Apartments. Mr. Work is an authority of bridge whist. His wife is also an expert. She once was noted as a golfer and trap shooter. The next year, Millicent married the widowed businessman Thomas Blythe Scott, who had a 28-year-old daughter and a 26-year-old son from his previous marriage. 18 days after the divorce was final, Milton married Margaret Hazelhurst Patton, no relation to the architect Hazelhurst. The L and the E are in different positions in their names. Margaret Hazelhurst Patton, 1888-1959, had recently divorced businessman Henry B. Patton. She survived Milton. There were no children from either marriage. When Milton C. Work died in 1934, he received only slight mention in local newspapers and the New York Times. The bridge magazines talked about him a little more, but mostly in his professional capacity as a bridge master. Most of his private life remained just that, private. He's interred next to his parents in an unmarked grave in the shadow of the Betts Mausoleum in the Summit section of Laurel Hill West. Neither wife is with him. In 1966, Milton Cooper Work was in the second group of men to be elected to the Bridge Hall of Fame. If your curiosity about bridge is piqued, there are plenty of podcasts and tutorials on YouTube to teach you the basics through advanced play. You can watch people play contact and duplicate bridge either streaming from a tournament somewhere in the world or recorded on YouTube. A simple Google search finds plenty of bridge clubs still active around Philadelphia, much to my surprise. Bridge tournaments, they can be cutthroat. Hundreds of thousands of dollars are on the line in high-stakes duplicate bridge tournaments. They are so high-stakes there are barriers placed on the table so you can't even see your partner's face and trade some sort of secret nod or surreptitious wink or blink. The best pros in bridge have seven-figure incomes. Others make a living by hiring themselves out as partners, as ringers, as gunners for $20,000 or $30,000 a tournament. What you will probably find if you take up bridge is that playing bridge is a lot like playing music. If you don't do it with people who are better than you are, then you cannot expect to get better yourself. You can even play electronic solitary bridge online, and if you're that way, you can bet on your game. You can download bridge apps. For all things bridge, your best bet online is probably greatbridgelinks.com. Bridge sounds like a hobby with a lot of staying power. Maybe if I'd started 50 or 60 years ago. In the July 2025 episode of All Bones Considered, Laurel Hill Stories number 76, it's a handful of eccentrics. Laurel Hill residents whose stories don't conveniently fit anywhere else. Louis Gratz Fell, successful businessman, yachtsman, questionable taste in women. Late in life, he married a young woman who became America's most famous woman serial killer, Aileen Wuornos. He's buried at Laurel Hill East. Morton McMichael Hoyt, named for Philadelphia Mayor and Philadelphia County Sheriff Morton McMichael, married Tallulah Bankhead's sister 3 times, and he once jumped off an ocean liner to impress a woman. Major Wakeman Griffin Gribble, was an ex-military man who had a psychotic break in 1929, and he killed a police officer who'd been sent to check on him. Fellow tour guide and cemetery historian Tom Keels will share two stories with us. Civil War General Henry Morris Nagley, who successfully established a vineyard in California, but who got into trouble with love letters he wrote that included some suggestive illustrations, and Mabel Tinley Roloffs, one of the great con women of the 19th century, who's buried in an unmarked grave. Mid-July 2025, Biographical Bytes from Bala, Laurel Hill West Stories. I think it's going to be newspaper man and AIDS activist Ronald Boyd, who made a name for himself in Florida before he became society writer in Dallas during the oil boom of the 1970s and 1980s. I lived in Dallas from 1979 to 1982. So I'm kind of looking forward to diving through the Dallas newspapers. Even though this guy was born and raised in Philadelphia, he was a Temple graduate, he's buried at Laurel Hill West. He made his name for himself in Dallas during the days of the oil boom and high society. So I hope I can find a lot of good information, make a good podcast out of that. If you want upcoming activities at the cemetery, go to the website, laurelhillphl.com/events. We are getting closer to publication date. I hit what I thought was a horrid speed bump a couple of weeks ago. I got it smoothed out. We're back on track. And all bones considered, 52 Laurel Hill Women will be published no later than August 15th. I will have a table at the Market of the Macabre. I will sell it there. Might even sell it at the discount. We'll have to see. It will be available in the bookshop at the gift store starting in mid-August. And lots of book signings at local libraries. I've still got to contact them. American Philosophical Society, Historical Society, some other places to set up some readings also. All Bones Considered, Biographical Bytes from Bala, are mostly research, written, narrated, and produced by me, Joe Lex, retired professor of emergency medicine from Temple University, volunteer tour guide and podcaster for both cemeteries. You can reach me through my email, jrlexjr1947@gmail.com. The theme song, Names at Peace, is by local artist James Harrow. Maybe I will see you on a tour. Stay safe, stay well. The bibliography is up next, and I'll warn you, it's almost all newspaper articles. I really had to scrape for biographical information about Milton's work. He's kept a very private life, despite what appears to be a very public personality. His life was private. He rarely shows up in the newspapers unless it's something to do with a bridge competition. He wrote articles. The one that I was able to locate was for Smart Set magazine for February 1930. It's called Bridge Questions I Have Been Asked by Milton C. Work. The author of this article, an internationally known bridge authority, is our most prominent bridge lecturer, broadcaster, lawmaker, teacher, and writer. His daily mail contains hundreds of queries which come from all parts of the world. And he talks about, same questions I have. What is a finesse? What is a double? What is a rubber? How many jokers do you use? When both sides score enough to go game, who wins? When your partner is playing the no trump, what do you lead? Lots of questions. But other than that, it was newspaper articles. I ordered a book and it didn't show up on time, and that always bothers me when that happens. But there is a book called Anecdotes from the History of Bridge that was published by the New York Times. I couldn't find a PDF online. I ordered it, and I just started the research a little too late. The book didn't show up until, it hadn't showed up yet, and I'm recording this a couple of days before the podcast is to be released. If the book shows up, I may stick something in, and you may never hear this last part. So I got my fingers crossed for that. Anyway, in the meantime, till I see you at the cemetery, stay safe, stay well, stay above ground.